So you said perceived home field advantage. And maybe this is just me, I'm not obviously an NFL player. I'm not covering the league. Maybe I'm making too much of this. So you tell me. I view Lambeau Field, honestly, as the biggest home field advantage this year because of the weather. Like you said, the Saints dome team, Tampa warm, Cardinals play in the desert in a dome. The Rams obviously play in Los Angeles. Anyone really outside of the Seahawks plays in either a dome or warm weather location. Am I making too much of the cold to where basically maybe I am propping Lambeau up and the home field advantage because of the weather too much?
I don't think that it's not just the cold. It has to be more than the cold. It has to be windy, and the quarterback has to be able to throw through that wind. And so Drew Brees, who we know can barely throw over 25 yards, like if it's just cold, I think he's going to be okay. If it's snowing and it's cold, then you have a very slick field. And then you need a big back, like an A.J. Dillon. You need a big back to plant his legs and feet into the ground and be able to handle that slipperiness. You can't have that short, shifty, slight running back in those conditions. And so it's those things. So if you just have your run-of-the-mill cold day in Wisconsin, I don't really think that's going to matter with NFL professionals. But you start adding in elements to it, and then you have a Packers team that has lived in it, that practices in it. That's when you start to get that home field advantage.
Okay, that's definitely fair. And yeah, I just factored in the cold thinking, all right, this is going to be it. But that's a good point. Wind, snow, then we're really talking some wintry conditions out there in the frozen tundra. Going to give a lot of teams some trouble. Jonathan Jones at J, just the letter J, Jones9 on Twitter. So one team you just mentioned, right, one of the teams that you think could really get the Packers run for their money, Seahawks. Russell Wilson, he's a guy that first 7 games of the year, right, we are talking about let Russ cook. We were giving him the MVP, and deservedly so. 26 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He is phenomenal. He's dynamic. But the last 8 games, 12 touchdown passes, 11 turnovers. What's happened between the first half of the year and the second half of the year where we're letting Russ cook in the first half, get an MVP, and all of a sudden now he turns into an average quarterback? Is there one thing that you kind of look at that's happened with the Seattle offense, or you have confidence that they'll turn around come postseason time?
Yeah, well, they lost their running backs and they got them back. They had to rework them into the fold. But, there's been a little mythologizing about Russell Wilson, and this is a guy that I do not bet against. This is a guy that I completely respect, especially as a graduate of the University of North Carolina, where when I was there, we went 0-3 against Russell Wilson and the NC State Wolfpack. So I say that I've been knowing about Russell Wilson for a very, very long time. Okay, but what drove me nuts was at the start of this season, all this MVP talk about him. And, did you know that he's never had an MVP vote?
Oh, yes.
First of all, you only get one vote for MVP. And so you tell me what year you would have voted for Russell Wilson over insert guy who won the MVP. And there wasn't a year. If there were 1, 2, and 3, that'd be a different story. But then also every year, Russell Wilson does put himself into the MVP conversation. And then in that same year, his play goes down just enough to where you can't rightfully vote for him. It's not that people have overlooked Russell Wilson. It's that he has a stretch of games every single season where he does turn the ball over a little bit. And they do lose some really head-scratching games. And so you start putting all this together, and then I look at 2020 and I say, oh, yeah, that Russell Wilson, that's exactly what happens almost every single year. Now, he's turned the ball over a little bit more than in previous years in this stretch, but this isn't outside of the norm for Russ. There's a reason he's never had an MVP vote, and I think we're seeing it this year, and I hope when he starts out hot next year that we don't do this exact same thing.
Is that a Russell Wilson thing? Is that a Pete Carroll thing? Is that just a Seattle thing? Like you're right. Every year it feels like they just play these weird games. They always have weird scores involved. Is there just something bigger than maybe just Russell Wilson himself that's kind of leading to, like you said, every year kind of almost the same story happening with the Seahawks?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, he has a lot on his shoulders, and for the first, after the Super Bowl runs, he didn't have an offensive line, right? Mm-hmm. And then the Legion of Boom deteriorates, and now at the start of this season, it was the pass defense, and they've gotten to not be the historically worst pass defense in NFL history as the season has gone on. They're just not a perfect team. They're not a dynasty. They're not the Patriots with Bill Belichick, but they are really good. You don't. As a colleague of mine always says, you don't win a church raffle to get into the playoffs 7 out of 8 years or whatever it's been for Seattle. So they are a very good team, but we just need to adjust our expectations. I think at the start of the 2010s, we were looking at them as, wow, they're going to be in the NFC Championship game every single year because they were. And now I think that we're starting to see, hey, that defense was historically great. It's not the same anymore. Russ has to put a lot on himself, and the Seahawks put a lot on Russ's plate. And more times than not, he's going to deliver. But sometimes they're going to let you down. As far as those crazy losses to teams they should never lose to, I don't know what it is, but certainly, I mean, you look at if you do a season projection of the Seahawks whenever the schedule comes out in April or May, you're going to chalk up one loss. You don't know who it's going to be to, but you have to chalk up one of those head-scratching losses that has to be in there.
The consistency at least is impressive with those losses for sure. Talking to Jonathan Jones, CBS Sports senior NFL reporter. So, Jonathan, last question before I let you go. Speaking and sticking in the NFC West, Jared Goff this year, I feel like it's safe to say, being the second year in a row where the Rams could miss out on the playoffs, and his play especially has been inconsistent at best. I mean, they just signed, obviously, that long-term deal. This is year one of that extension. At what point in your mind do you think there becomes a discussion in Los Angeles that, hey, maybe this isn't the guy that we can rely on, maybe this isn't our guy to steer us to the future to another Super Bowl? Is that discussion starting as early this offseason? Do you need to see another year of Jared Goff struggling before you start to question maybe his future and his status as a Ram?
Well, I mean, his contract makes it such that there's not going to be anything that they can do this offseason.
Right.
And that's the way that the team has been constructed, and they very much believe in him and in their team construction. I wrote about this at CBSSports.com a week or two ago. It's still 2020, so all this stuff bleeds together, right? But they decided a long time ago, we're not going to have first-round picks anymore. We're going to use first-round picks for our Super Bowl window. We're going to pay our 5-star players. That's what Les Snead was calling them to me. And so that's Aaron Donald, that's Jalen Ramsey, and that's Jared Goff, the guy that was 2 first-round picks. Then they gave him more than $20 million per year in average annual value. So, if you make a move on him, eventually that is going to signal a complete, change in how you perceive this team. And I do not believe at all that the Rams are ready or believe that they need to make a change. But, because you pay those guys that sort of money, because you don't have first-round picks and you aren't able to bring in the 7-year veteran linebacker or the 10-year veteran safety to play backup roles, and you need your 5th-round safety play in that role, what you wind up doing is you don't have any money for a backup quarterback.
Right.
You can't go unless you get a Jameis Winston on a New Orleans type deal. You don't have the money to go out and get Andy Dalton. And so because of that, that's why they have John Wolford, who's going to be playing a guy who has not, accrued a single NFL stat. But that's the way it is. Now, could they have a Blake Bortles or something like that? Sure. But the way the Rams are constructed, and a number of teams are constructed, that you can throw the Chiefs and the Seahawks in there as well. Once you get to this point, if your starter goes out, it doesn't really matter. Your postseason's over.
Right. I just want to throw there one thing quickly, because like you said, they have given their guys long-term deals, even guys like Todd Gurley, Brandon Cooks. Now, I understand their money is different than Jared Goff's money, but they haven't exactly been shy about getting rid of guys they signed to long-term deals, especially, that quickly. Todd Gurley was, 15 months after he signed the deal, he was cut. There's still, even, with that history in Los Angeles, still nothing intimate or, close, I should say, in your mind that would signal that maybe they would think about moving on or any sort of situation like that.
No, I don't think so. And for whatever reason or reasons, they really do believe in Jared Goff, probably more than what it sounds like you and I believe in Jared Goff. But they do. And I don't think that they are at all at the point where they are going to make a move. But you're right. You need, when you recognize that there's a mistake that has been made, that you made, it's better to relieve yourself of that mistake as quickly as possible rather than ride it out. And I think that's what we saw, for example, in Washington with Dwayne Haskins. Throw your pride out the window, forget about wherever that person was drafted. If it's not working, and move on.
That's a very, very good point. Jonathan Jones, CBSSports.com, CBS Sports HQ, CBS Sports Center. Check out his article on the home field advantage or perceived home field advantage of Lambeau Field, dropping tomorrow on CBSSports.com. Jonathan Jones, really do appreciate you coming on and giving us a few minutes here. Enjoy the rest of 2020 and Happy New Year one more time.
Hey, same to you, man. I appreciate it.